Welcome, everybody, to your Wednesday episode of The Expendable Show, and I'm your host, The Expendable. So, hello, Bonnie. Yes, it is a happy hump day for sure. So, if you like my show, like, subscribe, and ding the bell. It helps the show grow. And this episode is brought to you by Gatsby Trading Solutions. So let's jump into our stats right off the bat so we can get to the meat and potatoes of the show. So gas went down again on average. So AAA is reporting that the average gas price is $2.94 a gallon across the United States. So we're getting closer. We could get below $2.89. Hello, Jessica. So mortgage rates went up. So I'm so confused. I keep trying to not put a lot of thought into it because I know that Jerome Powell's a complete idiot. But the mortgage rates went up to 6.125 for a 30-year fixed non-FHA loan on average, of course. Trump's approval rating, he went up almost an entire percentage this week. He's at 43.9. So Trump's doing good. Let's see what the Dow Jones closed at today. I've been driving around for the last 2 days, so I'm behind on my knowledge. Okay, so the Dow Jones closed at 48,057.75 cents. So we're seeing some good gains there on the Dow. Democrat Party still at 34%. Part of me thinks that they're not polling the Democrat Party because it's been probably 2 months since they've polled the approval ratings for the Democrats. I think they're afraid that it's going to go below 30. That's my theory anyway. Man, Bonnie, that's the $1 million question. So Bonnie said, how many missing, unalived, or drug-induced people do we have in Kentucky this week? I have another story. It's going to blow your mind. But this week, so we're going to kind of do what we do and transition from story to story. And I was just talking to my dear friend about how I transitioned from one thing to the next. And this is going to be very similar. So as you're reading this, hey, Rachel, especially those of you who have been following my show and understand the investigations that go on that we do in Kentucky, this one is going to be all this is going to tie together. So just kind of pick out what you see. Bonnie, this one's going to be bad and it's recent. So prepare yourself. And it's weird. I'll get to it. Like, it's almost like deja vu. Like, I feel like I dreamt this like 6 months ago, or I've seen this, or maybe there's another case similar to it that I read up on, but it's really eerie how similar, as soon as I heard the case, I was like, man, I've already heard this. This is old. And then I looked at the news and it's not. Had just happened in December. So anyway, so let's start off. We're going to start at the top. We're going to start with Tim Walz, Tampon Tim. We've been on it lately, but $1 billion fraud is a big deal. So we're going to talk about the corruption side of it and what that means for everybody, all the way down to small town Ohio, small town Kentucky. This has a trickle down effect that's going to hit everybody. And I'm going to explain why. So the trickle down effect. So as violent crime endangers communities across Minnesota because they have a high crime rate there as well, police say they were left stretched thin and underfunded while state leaders directed millions elsewhere. So this is the problem. They're saying that they don't have the funding in Minnesota to fund enough police officers. Well, would $1 billion be helpful? Because there's $1 billion that is missing that could have gone to properly fund law enforcement, which would have deterred a lot of crime and brought your crime rates down and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a direct effect for Minnesota, probably Minneapolis and St. Paul most directly. And this is by police union leaders. This is the data and the information that they're providing. Freddie, you're right. And at some point, I'm going to get to that. So that gap in funding is under the microscope as the state of Minnesota deals with a massive fraud scandal involving hundreds of millions of dollars, which we now know probably is closer to $1 billion. It includes allegations of taxpayer money finding its way to terrorist groups, Al-Shabaab in Somalia, all under the nose of Democrat leaders. So Randy Sutton, who is he's a police veteran, he's a founder of an organization called the Wounded Blue. He told the news outlets that the crisis extends far beyond the agency or city, and it does. And we're going to discuss that. And he's absolutely right in his assumptions as we go down through them. So he says the public safety is at risk. We are a criminal justice crisis in America. Political leadership is destroying public safety through their ideology. He's 100% right. Politics is destroying law enforcement, either making it more corrupt or making it basically useless because policies prevent convictions or whatnot. Mark Ross, he's president of the St. Paul Police Federation. He says Minnesota is living that crisis in real time. And he's right. And that's similar to many other cities. Now, I can't say that about here in Atlanta because just as I was driving around the last 2 days, there is law enforcement everywhere. It's hard to believe that we have crime in Metro Atlanta because there's so many cops out everywhere. I'm not even joking. I probably passed 30 cops just today. It's insane. And they are actively pulling people over. And we went to this one area and like 2 cops pulled into this motel and they were about to do something. So like the cops here are out here deterring crime. So I don't want to take that away from the Atlanta PD, the Clayton County Sheriff's Office, Henry County Sheriff's Office, DeKalb, and all the surrounding Gwinnett. Like these guys, they don't play. Our cops do not play. If you're not doing anything wrong, they leave you alone. But if they catch you slipping, they're gonna get you. And we don't have like this major like political problem in our law enforcement. But I think it's because we have leaders that understand that you can't let your crime get out of control. And that's a big thing because as we look at counties like Pike County, who has this massive death toll, they have a massive murder rate, they have a massive missing persons rate, and you have London, Laurel County that has this huge corruption problem. I can continue to go on. Paris, Kentucky had a huge corruption problem. However, I think they're starting to take things seriously and they're starting to put that town back together at least from what I understand. So we're seeing a positive result out of the work that we did. Had we not brought that to everyone's attention, the same old would have happened in Paris, but we were successful there. I'm starting to dig into Floyd County a little bit, and we're starting to see a lot of similarities between Floyd County and Pike County. And then you have Grayson County, who's a whole other different bag of Doritos. That's probably more along the lines of the like sriracha flavored. So it's a huge issue. The corruptions are different, but they're the same at the same time. They do it basically the same way. They just have a different emphasis. So, I mean, Jessica, they have quotas in Ohio as well. The Ohio State Highway Patrol, you can almost guarantee like towards the end of the month, you're going to see a lot of people pulled over on the side of the highway. Everybody in Ohio knows this. And so we want to, once you know the pattern, then, you should be okay. You know to mind your P's and Q's when you're out doing stuff. We do not, from what I understand, at least back in the day, there wasn't. we didn't have like a DUI quota or a domestic violence quota. It was more along the lines of speeding tickets is what the State Highway Patrol did. Now at the sheriff's office, we didn't really have that issue. There's no quota, at least not in the little sheriff's office that I worked at. It was mainly we were just community members that had authority. That was basically it. I mean, we have our share of massive corruption, but generally when it came to the public, that was kind of the line that they didn't cross. Like, keep the corruption with the troubled people of the community, but leave the good folks of the community alone. So, so Mark Ross also went on to say, he said, we've been down anywhere from 50 to over 100 officers since 2020, and we just haven't recovered from that. Right now, we're about 1,000 police officers short in the state of Minnesota, and we're on pace to lose another 2,000 to 2,500 over the next few years. The staffing shortages come as Minnesota recorded 170 murders in 2024. Hey, Pike County, you guys are kind of getting close to that. Just your little county there. Interesting. So there's a law enforcement shortage. And I think when it comes to every major metropolitan area, you're going to see that same problem. And we know what it comes from. It comes from that when the lefties went after the law enforcement after the George Floyd thing. Jessica, I'm not going to lie. I just got a speeding ticket like a month ago in Riverdale, Georgia. I didn't realize I was speeding through a school zone, and the camera sent me a ticket in the mail. So, yeah, I just got a speeding ticket. It sucks. I hate paying speeding tickets, but that's what I get for being careless. I've only had 2 speeding tickets in like the last 15 years, and they were both in a school zone. So, the fines like doubled. So the staffing shortages in Minnesota, it's a problem. And then he goes on to say that they're only slightly below the year before, with firearms involved in nearly 75% of those killings, which that doesn't really surprise me all that much. Assaults on police officers also jumped up 1.5%. Yeah, Rachel, it does. There's some similarities there. Hi, Kathy. It's a family reunion in the chats today. Statewide in Minnesota, carjackings rose 5.5% and rapes increased 5.2% from 2023 to 2024. I wonder why. Assaults on peace officers also jumped up 1.5%. So the recruitment and retention have reached a breaking point, not only in St. Paul, but statewide. So this is a problem in Minnesota all the way around. He says the overall landscape for policing in Minnesota has gotten really, really competitive. We're losing officers to other departments that are paying more and offering greater incentives. So he also said in the state's massive fraud losses. He said, now the subject of multiple federal investigations have worsened long-term pressures on public safety agencies. These billions of dollars could have been spent on public safety, but it's gone, and we'll never see that money again, which he's completely right. So Sutton, who tracks crime trends nationally, said the shortages could not come at a worse time. He said last year, more than 85,000 American officers were assaulted. Every single day, an officer is being shot. We've never seen volume like this. Both experts warn that Minnesotans may not fully grasp the extent of the public safety crisis, especially in the metro areas where crime is concentrated. While violent crime dipped slightly in greater Minnesota, The BCA reports a 1% rise in violent crime across the 7-county Twin Cities region, including Minneapolis and St. Paul, where police staffing has been hit the hardest. So you have $1 billion missing. Tim Walz gets on TV all the time, says, well, we don't have a crime problem. I've got crime under control. But yet the federal stats are coming back and saying, no, that's not correct. There's a 1% crime increase, actually. He also went on to say that people are afraid to even report crime, and some police agencies aren't reporting to the FBI, which we know, if anybody knows anything about Kentucky, that happens quite frequently. That your locals, they don't want the feds sniffing around their little corrupt little counties, so they don't tell them anything. And how jurisdiction works, the FBI is not going to show up unless there's been a law enforcement request for them to come assist. So there's that problem. So he went on to say that the figures are skewed. He said, we don't even have an accurate picture of violent crime because half of the stuff isn't. So a 1% increase probably really equates to an 8% increase. So that it's because the reporting, the data has been altered by these small communities that want to hide their crime. So Ross went on to say that St. Paul officers are doing more with less, even as community expectations increase. So Tim Walz's office, they made a statement. He defended the administration's record, pointing to what they described as unprecedented public safety investments across Minnesota. Told you. He's pumping up something that the stats say otherwise. You can't, what do the Democrats always say? Follow the science. Well, the data is right there, and Tim Walz is not following the data. The governor signed the largest public safety budget in state history, allegedly. It's probably full of pork and earmarks. That's probably the only reason why it got signed. Investing money in every single police department in the state. However, state organizations are saying that that is not the case because they didn't see the money because somebody stole it. But this is his new plan. So I shouldn't say what I said, but Walz's office also noted that Walz's efforts to fund a new state patrol headquarters and the recent groundbreaking of a new state crime lab added that Minnesota was recently ranked as one of the safest states. I find that hard to believe. Maybe if you take out St. Paul and Minneapolis, it's probably safe because the small towns will hold it down. But I agree, Jessica. I think the money got stolen and the Somalians had a lot to do with it. We'll get to that here in a second. So the governor's office also pushed back on claims that the state's high-profile fraud cases affected law enforcement resources. Critics argue that those losses drained taxpayer dollars that could have supported public safety, but the administration rejected that characterization. I don't know how you can reject that characterization because if somebody steals $1 billion, that's money that doesn't go back to your community or your state. So for him to say that shows just how out of touch with reality that Tim Walz actually is. They went on to say, fraudsters stole money from programs like Medicaid that are funded primarily with federal funding. So police funding is not affected. He said, well, lucky for you, the law enforcement funding wasn't affected, but it was Medicaid, who every liberal in America just bashed Trump for the government shutdown. But yet, if $1 billion got taken from, the poor people's medical coverage, who cares, right? It only matters when Trump does it. So Walz's office went on to add, the governor has made public safety a top priority for the state, providing hundreds of millions in funding for cops. I wonder if he was making it priority when his wife went out and said, hey, can you open up the windows so I can smell the city burning? I don't know if that counts. If that's defending public safety when you're like, oh, let's smell the ambience of the city burning to the ground. I don't think that's fighting crime. I might be wrong. Maybe I'm in a parallel universe where everything's backwards. I don't know. Bonnie, I don't know. I haven't heard that there's any Somalians in Laurel County. I don't know. Maybe we should start that rumor and see if we can get Weddle to get on his podcast and talk about it, about the Somalians in the county. Rachel, I think we're in a world that's backwards. I agree. I think maybe we're living in a real life Stranger Things where we're in the upside down or something. I just finished the first 4 episodes of the final season of Stranger Things, so I'm hip. I know what's going on. So Waltz's office added that the governor has made public safety, blah, blah, blah. Ross said that the governor's claims do not reflect what officers experience on the ground. He said those are all projects that need to be done, but we're looking for is continued funding all the time, not a one-time funding. So there. He does. There is a podcast, Jessica. It's the most ridiculous thing. We're going to talk about it here in a minute. I know. We got to finish the last half of the season. I'm completely invested. So he went on to say you can't frame things that way. It all comes with the same pool of money. Those are tax dollars. I think taxpayers would not be amused by that response, which they're not. I'm not amused by it, but I'm highly critical of when Tim Waltz talks, because we all know that Tim Waltz is a crook, and we all know that Tim Waltz really likes horses and whatnot. There's a legitimate fear they might be prosecuted or terminated for doing their jobs, even when they've done everything correctly. So the police are under intense scrutiny. He said the first thing cops think during their use of force incident is, am I going to jail for this? Hey, they don't do that in Kentucky. They say, hey, we'll beat the shit out of somebody, potentially kill them, and it's okay. We got qualified immunity. We're going to stretch that out as far as we can. So there's all these issues, going on there. Now, the scope of fraud. So prosecutors estimate that there's over 1 million missing. There's an organization called the Feeding of Our Future. That scheme alone siphoned 250 to 300 million meant to feed low-income children during the pandemic. Stolen. By who? I don't know. Probably Tim Waltz himself. Who knows? But, we don't want to speculate, because then I'll sound like Randall Weddle on Melissa Jones's podcast, where we just throw out speculations all over the place. That's exactly the one I'm talking about. Randall Weddle provided zero facts. He gets on his little podcast and goes, well, they're just peddling conspiracy theories all the time. Actually, I should say it right. Well, they're just peddling conspiracy theories. Me and the little mayor, we're listening to the conspiracy theories. Yeah, so then he goes on this podcast with Melissa Jones, who's a so-called journalist who worked for some media outlet 1,000 years ago, who completely helped peddle the propagandist, opinionated show, which if that's what she's trying to do, that's fine. It's her show. But Randall Weddle, as a public official, continues to go on podcasts and attack the citizens, people that pay taxes in Laurel County and in London, and expects that to be okay. It's not okay. You're an elected official. Like I've said 1,000 times, Randall Weddle, if you can't handle criticism from your constituency as an elected official. If you can't handle that and your skin's too thin, don't be in politics. Period. Or my bad, Bonnie, her video, because we all know that she's the propagandist voice of Randall Weddle, along with what's that other lady's name that continually propagates? What, the city of London just hired her to be the PR person, but all she does is attack people all day. Like, what a great PR person. Your PR person she creates her own public relations nightmare to clean up. It makes no sense. I guess it's job security. Everything that they do is unethical, completely unethical. The fact that the state of Kentucky doesn't intervene on anything that Randall Weddle does tells me that everything I need to know. Because if this had happened in Ohio or any other state that has normal leadership that's not bought and paid for by the richest guy in the area, they would have shut this clown show down by now. It would have been over with. Yeah, it was 28 minutes. He did 28 minutes of talking about conspiracies. Well, we think they were doing this. We think they were doing that. Oh, well, the city council's wearing a trench coat like it's a special op. Oh, they got this person in the truck. You know what? If your people would stop threatening the city council, Randall, the city council people wouldn't have to drive around with a truckload of people to help protect them. Because we know that the London City Council is being threatened all the time. And we know that the city police department will not help them. That's why the sheriff's office has to come and do outside security at a city council event, because the police department will allow people to be slaughtered out in that parking lot. John Root actually is doing them a solid, doing the people of London a solid by showing up there and keeping the peace in the parking lot. He shouldn't have to do that, but he has to, because nobody else is being an adult in the room, or nobody else is following the law and doing the right thing. The law is the law. It's not an interpretation. The police department is not a goon squad, even though the more and more I hear about Bobby Day and the things that he does, the more and more I feel 100% he needs to go to prison like tomorrow. This guy is nothing but trash. 100%. He's going to get mad and probably post mean things about me, but whatever. He's a crook, and he's bought and paid for, and he threatens. He's caught on camera threatening people. John Inman pushed a guy out of the police department one day out the back door because he wanted an open records request. This is the type of stuff that these guys do. And then not to mention, they don't want to talk about nothing that has anything to do with Doug Harless. Randall Weddle keeps pawning the KSP. Okay, well, do you understand? You gave Andy Bashir $500,000, Randall. $500,000. He gave $200,000 back to you. So there's still $300,000 sitting in Andy Bashir's coffers. What did that go to? Apparently, it buys you a judge, it buys you a police department, it buys you KSP, it buys you all kinds of stuff that keeps your little racket going on in your town. You wonder why the conspiracy theories go on? Because you set the environment for it. I know, Bonnie, we're like the least most liked people on the planet. At least in the probably, listen, I get death threats from all over Kentucky, so I already know what time it is. Or Weddle's people, some anonymous person from London said that they was going to shoot me in the forehead. One of Weddle's people. I said, y'all know where I live. Come on. But they won't do it because they'll have big problems if they come here. Big problems. Got to see if I'm getting fact checked. No fact checking. Just emails with more tips on it. I love them. So how does the Minnesota fraud transcend into Kentucky? How does that happen? Yeah. I'm gonna make sure people in Grayson County are gonna go to prison when I'm done. Mark that. Um, so how does that transcend from Minnesota to Kentucky? It's not a state by state thing. It's not like Minnesota directly affects Kentucky. But what it does is it shows how the pattern of corruption trickles down. So you have this $1 billion stolen in Minnesota. It affects Medicaid, it affects law enforcement, it affects the taxpayers. Now you have taxpayers going, how did I pay for someone's theft? What, I'm not paying for crime. Like, how is the state going to fix that? They're not going to. They're just going to point the finger at the fall guy, whoever, the 75 people that they've arrested. They're going to say, well, problem solved. Everybody went to prison. Well, hopefully that's not what happens. Hopefully they go after the head of the snake. So I have a saying that a lot of people say, well, why do you do these things, Eric? Well, because I'm a Trump fan. Everybody knows it. I come from a long line of Trump people. When Trump made his promise to the United States and said, we're going to eliminate corruption, I took that as that's the word. Corruption's over with. But what I've noticed is that you can't spend the last 4 years complaining about the Biden administration's corruption and then turn around and say, well, our corruption's okay. It's not going to work. You can't replace corruption with corruption. You can't take the blue corruption and replace it with red corruption. This is a lose-lose situation. Either you allow all corruption or none. And that's how it's got to go. Well, and Freddie, you probably made the correct decision, because what I'm seeing, especially as I've dug deep into Kentucky, is the corruption doesn't really have a party. It's both. And I think everybody speculated that, but the politicians are so good, at least before social media became the watchdog of the world, that they were getting away with this for a long, long time. Well, now that's over with. Everything they do is exposed. And it's just a matter of who sees it at the right time and how can we mass produce the information so everybody sees it. Yeah, Rachel, shit or get off the pot concept. Either we're doing corruption or we're not. If we're getting rid of corruption, let's get it done. What are we waiting on? We got all these little tiny little communities in Kentucky that I've been in. They've got buku corruption going on, and Andy Beshear's enabling it. He's allowing it to happen. Coleman at KSP or Barrett at KSP is allowing it to happen. The AG Coleman is allowing it to happen. You have all these party leaders allowing this to happen. The accountability starts at the top, and it's got to trickle down to stop it. Now, this is what we're talking about, the trickle down. So corruption happens. Tim Walz, obviously, the whistleblowers are saying he knew about it. It's trickled down to the taxpayer. This is the same thing going on in Kentucky. Corruption's at the top. It trickles down to the taxpayer. And by the time the corruption systems are in place, you as a taxpayer become powerless. You can't fight it because they've covered all their bases. Jessica, so Andy Beshear is an invitee of the World Economic Forum. So I'll guarantee you he is in cahoots with all of the major party leaders on the left. It's just what they do. The right does it too. So the corruption, it's going to mass produce and it's going to breed. It's going to breed like rabbits all throughout your communities. if it's allowed at the top, it'll be allowed at the district level, and it'll be allowed at the local level. And it is. This is why Kentucky's out of control. And it's going to breed through departments. KSP's corrupt. Your local police department's got corruption going on. Your sheriff's office has a lot going on. And what these guys do is they say birds of a feather flock together, right? So you'll see, let's say Andy Bashir does something corrupt. He's going to go say, hey, this guy's got a sketchy past and he's in my little inner group. So I know the stuff he's done wrong. So I'm going to hold him hostage with that information. That guy's going to do the same thing. He's got to go, well, I don't want my little scams getting brought out in the open. So I need to hold these corrupt guys below me hostage. And it just trickles down. And then you have this network of political people, cops, and everything else, judges, lawyers, and doctors and whatnot. They're all networked in where they're all holding each other's dirt hostage. And I think it's a very simple concept. And so sweeping it under the rug, Jessica, is exactly what they do. And they do it with the help of each other. Now, this guy might get into a little bit of trouble. Like, let's say City Councilman Jim gets pulled over for a DUI and he gets mouthy with the cop. Well, guess what? Councilman Jim's not going to go to jail because he's a councilman. And then he's going to go, hey, I know I got dirt on the judge. I'm never going to see a day in jail. This is exactly what in Pike County, what Paul Coleman was trying to do. He was trying to say, I got dirt on Robbie Wright. I got dirt on this guy. I got dirt on this guy. I'm never going to do a day in jail. But at some point, when the bad publicity falls back on you as a judge and everyone knows it, and Paul Coleman was bragging about it online. At some point, they're going to sell you up the river. You know, you sink your own ship, and that's what happened in that situation. He ended up getting indicted because he was being too reckless. So they will cut the ties of those that get too reckless. So what has happened is your local governments have lost their moral compass. They've got so much going on, in their little schemes that they forget. They forget that we have a duty to the people, and they forget that because the money-making scheme over here is more important. That's my main priority. I'll get to the people later, but I got to make sure I'm making my money first. I've heard of that, Bonnie. I've heard of it. I've got that one on my list eventually. They let this guy go. The court systems in Grayson County basically gave him a head start and said, flee. Go ahead and run. So, for example, so we can't function as a country and be fiscally responsible when these crooks continue to steal the tax money for their own gain. It's never going to work. If every state stole $1 billion, if every state stole $1 billion, that's $50 billion, right? That $50 billion is enabling fraud. It's enabling it. And if we don't handle it, it's gonna never end, which is why the Democrats got so mad. And some Republicans got mad when Trump got rid of some of the federal programs that they were siphoning money through. The circle jerk of, hey, give this money to this NGO, and then the NGO is going to kick it back to me because I helped them get the funding. It's how it is. And for example, It's like using taxpayer money to have a bridge built that goes to your property where you just put up a bunch of tiny houses to benefit from the tourist industry when you're an elected official. You're using your influence to make yourself money. Do the taxpayers need to fit your bill for the bridge that needs to go to your property? No. Private property. Build your own damn bridge. So he's trying to, and it's actually on his property. So I looked it up. Or when you have $2.5 million, when you have $2.5 million missing from your budget, where did that go? Why do you not have to answer for why your budget is missing $2.5 million? Especially if that $2.5 million comes out of the law enforcement budget. Where did $2.5 million go? It should be easy to track down. Why can't anybody find it? Why are we told not to find it? That's the question. Or making a podcast statement that city council is at fault for everything when you make your own rules behind the scenes. I've seen it. I've seen all your little documents. I've seen them all. That all the little stuff you do that you bypass city council approval. What about that? It's enabled. It's enabled behavior from the top. Or speak your mumbo jumbo from years ago while dodging the issues of today. We want to talk about the past all day long, pointing the finger. Well, before I got here. What about today? What about today? Why are we not dealing with the issues of today? Hang on. I don't see it. It's not on there. Or stealing $7 million from a hospital as an executive of the hospital. Your ledger's off $7 million. So what do? Do you figure out who stole the $7 million? Well, there's not much to figure out if you're the one that stole it. So what do? You go fire everybody who figured it out. You go fire everybody who brought it to your attention and said, hey, there's $7 million missing. It's enabled behavior. So there becomes an erosion of trust. When public funds are stolen, residents lose confidence in government. Nonprofits, we lose confidence in the nonprofits because a lot of this money goes to them and it's supposed to be used through them. And we lose confidence in local leaders. This can make people less likely to engage civically or support community programs. I don't donate to nonprofits because I don't know if it's actually going where it needs to go. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And so I want to clarify that just because there's a high population of Somalians, it doesn't mean the Somalians as a collective are evil or bad. What it means is that the probability of one of the fraudsters being Somali is high because there's a high there's a high congregation of them in the state. So I don't want to create a stigma or create a stereotype that's going to be what it is. But we do want to call it fraud. I'll guarantee you every ethnic group that's in Minnesota is probably represented in this fraud. So to narrow it down to one, it's not fair. But we do know that, well, we speculate, and I think it'll come out eventually, that Ilhan Omar had something to do with that, because she actually did receive kickbacks from one of the in question nonprofits. So we'll see where that goes. So what also it will do, when states try to correct fraud, they'll tighten the regulations and the stipulations on future funding. So it's going to hurt smaller organizations, because now they're not going to be able to have as much access to state and federal funding, because the guidelines got tighter, because they don't want to get the money stolen again. So there's that. So now we're going to talk about this case real quick. I had way more stuff to talk about with that, but I'm going to skip it because I'm running out of time. So just recently, a West Virginia woman is facing felony charges, including attempted murder, after another woman was found assaulted near her burned residence. According to court documents, on December 9th, Angel Joy Hunt, 28, of Left Fork of Bend Creek Road, Warrencliffe, West Virginia, was lodged in the Pike County Detention Center on charges of attempted murder, first-degree assault, first-degree strangulation, and first-degree arson in relation to the incident. So according to a warrant taken out by KSP Trooper Terry Mounts on December 6th, look how fast they got to this case. I'm impressed. Probably because this woman had no ties to anybody important, so they were actually able to go out and do real police work without having politics get involved. Yes, Bonnie. So this happened, it happened in Freeburn. So the caller reported that the woman had been found lying on a bench, beaten half to death, and was bleeding from the ears and nose with her eyes swollen shut. Upon arrival, the State Highway Patrolman Mounts wrote, he made contact with the woman, who was identified as the occupant of the burned residence, and found that her feet had been burned. The warrant said that the woman was unable to speak, and he was unable to obtain a statement from her before she was transported to be treated for her injuries. Mounts wrote that a video from a nearby residence was obtained, which showed Hunt walking away from the residence just after midnight that day. The warrant said Mounts had encountered Hunt on an unrelated call December 5th, and that Hunt was wearing the same clothes she was wearing in the video. Mounts wrote that he also found a jacket Hunt had been wearing when he saw her on December 5th hanging on a tree near the residence where the victim was found. So this woman wasn't very smart, obviously. On December 9th, the warrant said the victim became alert and responsive while being treated at Pikeville Medical Center, and told the troopers that Hunt had tied her hands behind her back with an extension cord, choked her with her hands, and put her toes inside an Amish heater. This woman was tortured. The warrant said the victim told investigators that Hunt had beaten her with her hands and stomped on the victim with her feet and broke glass on her back. Mounts wrote that the victim told investigators that Hunt then set a fire inside the living room of the victim's residence. I'm shocked at this case, at the extensive violence that happened in this case. The sad part about it is the people in the community are so used to this level of violence that this case is kind of passed over and not really made any big waves. It's insane. I find it completely absurd. Your tolerance level to violence has been altered severely. I don't know what the motive is, but I know that this woman didn't deserve to be tortured like she was tortured. I've had numerous things forwarded to me on this case, statements that the family members, her daughter, this woman's daughter, put out a statement, and I my heart hurts for her because this is a horrible thing. Like can you imagine the amount of PTSD this woman's going to have for the rest of her life? What's up, G bro? And the family's going to have to carry her because she's going to struggle. And I pray that she's able to recover. I pray that God gives her the strength to recover. So that's the next insane case. It does look like that Pike County has made haste in holding someone accountable. So I'm still kind of waiting to see what this woman's motive was. Why did she go after this lady? Who I'm not going to mention her name because I don't want people to be Facebook stalking her and everything else while she's trying to recover. It's too new of a case. So that's more violence. I'm going to add this one to the list, even though it's not a situation like what we're used to as far as missing people and whatnot. It was an attempted murder, so I'm going to count it. So yes, once again, I'm going to touch on the Randall Weddle and Melissa Jones interview. For completely unprofessional of Melissa Jones to do that, and she's a hater of mine, so she's probably going to make a TikTok talking about how evil I am, but that's fine. But I as somebody who dabbles in journalism internationally, I can tell you that, if you're going to, claim your journalism credentials, I wouldn't if I was her with that interview. I would call myself a correspondent because the correspondent doesn't necessarily have to be factual. They can give you opinions all day. And that's more or less what it was. And I think for Randall Weddle to continually get on here and bash the people of his community is a travesty, because regardless of what he thinks about of the Phelps boys, they have a lot of support. There's a lot of backing for the Phelps. It seems to be that the average citizen of Laurel County and London they don't necessarily take the side of the Phelps, but they take the side of Doug Harless. Now, what they've done is take the people who maybe didn't like the Phelps all that much, but they love Doug Harless, and they've combined these two factions to go against Randall Weddle, who is the city tyrant. Jessica, I did watch it all because I had to see. Weddle likes to throw little jabs in, and so I had to make sure that that I caught everything. It's just like with the, I had a court case forwarded to me this morning of one that I've been looking at, and I talked about it last week, but I'm not gonna specifically mention it because it's currently being civil litigated. However, I'm going to tell you what I saw in the court video. I watched two KSP officers lie on the stand. The one sergeant told two different stories, and nobody seemed to pick up on it. I did. I went through that thing with a fine-tooth comb. I could tell when the detective sergeant lied. His tells were very, very telling. And the fact that procedurally The way the situation was handled was completely unprofessional. And I'm going to, as soon as I get it formatted, I'm going to play it and break it down and show you exactly every time that this KSP officer Owens, the unknown KSP officer, every time he lied on the stand, and the other one, the other KSP officer, Adams, I don't know what his name is. Every time he lied, I can tell you when he lied. And we're gonna break that down. And there should be the whole case against the guy should be thrown out 100%. So we'll get into it, and that's coming up. But I got to format the video so that way I can play it, and I got to get to the main points because there's a lot of mumbo jumbo in there that don't mean anything. But you can definitely tell that the Grayson County courts are definitely trying to shut this guy up. They do not want him out and about. And he didn't do anything. He got shot. You get shot, but the cops are going to go after you for getting shot. Makes total sense. But that's the show for the day. I appreciate everybody. And I'm out. Peace.